Battle Maiden! Once again, you have earned my respect, and the respect of all our people. You have surpassed your title. You are a Battle Maiden no longer. Take your new crown, Nar'jira, Champion of Azshara. With the summoning complete, and the armies of Azshara gathering for war, Neptulon the Tidehunter will soon fall!
Greetings and citations, everyone.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys!
After what went down in the campaign finale for Midnight, I wasn't sure I'd get hyped again. But as it turns out, my curiosity has been piqued quite a bit. And the reason is simple. The Naga. Yes, the Naga have been long since been a foe to the denizens of Azeroth. Time and time again, we have dealt with them in battle, whether they were common enemies we'd face throughout Azeroth, to their escapades within the Coilfang Reservoir, and previously, their rise of Azshara's empire during Battle for Azeroth. We could guarantee that they'd be a force to contend with, even in places we never expected them to pop up from under the sea. And they were an even bigger threat during Cataclysm in places like Darkshore or Quel'thelas. But we would learn later that their front would be much, much worse beyond the coasts of the Eastern Kingdom, where the Alliance and Horde would be waylaid by them and dragged to the depths of Vashj'ir, which was a host of a small land bar that Garrosh and Varian Wrynn had a stake in claiming. And from its depths, from this conflict under the Dark Ocean, rose a powerful champion that we, as the player, uncovered the might of by seeing things from their view. And after 16 years of waiting, it would seem they're finally making a reappearance in possibly a big way during Midnight. That's right, I'm talking about none other than Azshara's own champion, the champion herself, Nar'jira.
Who?
Okay, you're probably wondering why I'm very hyped over a character that not a lot of people are familiar with. Vashj'ir was one of the few underwater zones that we have in the game, which, hot take, is one of my favorites from Cataclysm. Yeah, I know, put down your tomatoes, I just love the uniqueness of the zone. Plus, you get to hear one of the most quotable lines there ever was. Anyways, but in Vashj'ir, we were directed by our allies, either the Alliance or the Horde, depending on who you are, to investigate the events that led to the Naga's own rise to power here. To do this, we uncover various key moments that took place in these waters previously, and all of it centered on a specific character whose story we get to explore through a series of quests playing as her. Further comments, but these quests are simply enjoyable, and I really hope to see more quests like these in the future. Specifically the ones where we get to play as the characters themselves, other than our own. It adds an extra layer to why we should care about this lore character, and when we get to see the world through their eyes. In this case, we're playing as Nar'jira, or as many of us were introduced to her as, the Battle Maiden. There was an air of mystery to her, which is probably why I grew to like her, despite not knowing much about her beyond the zone itself. Doing various tasks for the Naga, we encounter and defeat later on within the zone, and even in the dungeon itself. Most of it culminated in taking back their city from the Quel'thelas. By the end of this conflict, the Naga are successful in summoning their reinforcements, the Faceless Ones, and the mighty Azamat, who later manages to weaken Neptulon for the Naga, all of which would not remotely have been close to happening without the aid of the Battle Maiden. For this, the Naga leader, at least in Vashj'ir, Lady Naz'jatar, names Nar'jira the champion of Azshara, And that was essentially the last time we had heard or seen of Nar'jira, which I've seen as both a blessing and a curse for the character, naturally. Throughout Vashj'ir, we thwart Lady Naz'jatar in the Throne of the Tides, and Neptulon somehow manages to save himself from Azamat, and Azamat escaped and is still active today. But Nar'jira, she's completely missing from it all. During Legion, when Azshara sends her Naga to the Broken Isles to fish up the Tidestone of Golganeth, we don't see Nar'jira anywhere, and later, when she somehow gets the Tidestone during the Fourth War, and uses it to lure us to the Eternal Palace in Naz'jatar, still no Nar'jira. Despite many times of the Naga having a, well, they don't have legs, do they? Belly scales, I guess? Belly scales in this race. We don't see any mention nor teases for Nar'jira anywhere, despite it making sense for her to turn up. And to address the, dare I say, clunky Elec in the room, this is of course a drop storyline from the Cataclysm. Now, drop stories are quite often dropped, moved around, etc, etc. It's a very common thing in stories and very common for Warcraft to do, with its plots and especially its characters. One of those instances was from a scrapped Abyssal Maw raid that would have shown us a satisfying conclusion to the Vashj'ir storyline, continuing off from the Throne of the Tides dungeon, where we would have saved Neptulon from Azamat's grasp and ultimately bring down Nar'jira. But much like a lot of the content that we were promised from that expansion, we never got to see it, and so we had an awkward wide berth of stories that were never continued. But were slightly addressed, at least in some shape or form. Nar'jira's fate remained a mystery until now. That's where the benefit I mentioned earlier is finally ticking in. Yes, while Nar'jira's story was shelved for many years now, we finally get to see a form of that continuation for her arc. We believe that she never really died, and we're wondering what became of her when we ventured to Azshara's very own den and dealt a very heavy blow to the Naga, where in Naz'jatar during Battle for Azeroth. We defeated Azshara, but we did not kill her. It ultimately left the door open for an eventual return of the Naga down the line. And there's a lot of hype running around Nar'jira's return too. She feels like an even bigger threat to deal with than she did during the Cataclysm, considering her absence, and how much that elevates her in the grand scheme of it all. She truly feels like something special and something massive if Queen Azshara herself didn't throw her at us just yet. But now we get the meat and the bones of it. Why is she back in the picture now? That's a good question to ask next. During our journeys traveling throughout Quel'thelas, as we are met with the Naga and who have somehow slithered on to the shores of Ebersong, even going as far as to conspiring with elven pirates to acquire artifacts, liquidate assets, plunder booty. On the surface, they're gathering any arcane energy they can scavenge, only to make out like bandits all the way back to the dark depths. And we are being the rootin' tootin' champions of the Alliance and Horde that we are, and we put an end to these incursions with the Naga. Except that's not how it ends. Unfortunately, rather a greater force shows up, more dead set on gathering these arcane motes and bringing it back to those deeps. And it's all hinted in this very letter that we give to Aethys, and he basically reads this out loud to us. Deepest tidings, Princess. Nar'jira the Honored graciously offers you her chosen to aid your endeavors in Eversong. Accept and behold the Deep Lurk's mastery over the powers of old. Do not shirk this offer like the Dark Tide, who refused her aid in their foolish pursuit of the Storm Cursed. Once you have what you need, return to the deeps. When the concord of the tides is called, we must be the first to answer. Nar'jira the Honored. She has her own army she's sending into Eversong, her own group, now that she leads, and is clearly busy. but that tells me enough that Nar'jira is probably higher than any other Naga at this point, excluding the Queen, obviously. Putting her into a position of power, maybe as a regent for Azshara while she's away seeking what she's seeking, or something else. At the very least, she leads a group of her very own in a major way. The last time we spotted Azshara, she was leaving Ny'alotha to aim to her own next seat of power, leaving the Naga behind to wait for her return. It may be possible that that's the move that she is making, putting someone as strong and able to lead an army like Nar'jira to gather arcane energy, while Azshara is seeking power beyond what she originally held. This makes me think that we will likely be dealing with Nar'jira in a major way too. As much as I would be elated to see her as the main antagonist for a patch, but regardless, I hope she's the big bad and that they save Azshara for a later expansion or her own saga. Much as I would love for Ridikron, Azshara, and Zali to be their own trio of villains for this saga, I'm unsure that's happening anymore, or if there's enough time for them to be the trio that I want them to be. Which, if you're looking for some inspiration, Blizz, I got a song that may or may not change your mind down the road. Wink wink, nudge nudge, noises. The moment I saw these Naga popping up, I had a feeling we'd have a Naga patch at some point down the line, and it's the perfect expansion to do that in. Midnight is essentially the elf expansion, so why not include the Naga, who are not only elves, but are led by the elf, who jump-started a lot of Warcraft's own pathos. We are seeing it in real time, and it started with making mention of Nar'jira. The only way for Blizz to hit the mark is to reintroduce her to the new players, and anyone who needs a refresher. Think a lore-walking campaign for the Naga, similarly to how they're doing one for the Loa in 12.07, and Thrall later down the line. I've seen it. I've seen the Thrall. I know he's coming. I know he's happening. But personally, I'm excited to reunite with an old frenemy who will beat me to a pulp for her queen. After dealing with the near disaster story has been so far, it has rejuvenated a lot of hype in me to see what potential the Warcraft team will really bring to the table, especially when it comes to bringing characters we haven't seen in almost 16 years. And there you have it. Do you think that we'll take on Nar'jira, or ally with her against Azshara and Midnight? Could she deceive us and join Azshara in one final confrontation against us? Let me know your thoughts down below. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I've been Khono Chronos, your lovely time demigod and host. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos like this one in the near future. Be sure to join the Discord for more discussions with myself and the community, and a special thanks to the patrons and YouTube community members to help keep this channel alive and well. But until next time, my friends, see ya!